we understand the features of Indo Islamic architecture. Okay, so I guess few more participants are there. All right, yes, chalo. So when I say Indo-Islamic architecture, so basically Indo-Islamic architecture, it refers to the synthesis, or it refers to the amalgamation of the two architectural trends. So the Indian architectural trend and Islamic architectural trend. So Indian architectural trend is the one which already originally existed in India. And when we talk about the Islamic one, it is the one that entered into India in the early 13th century onwards, that is with the advent of Turkish invasions and all. Whatever Islamic architecture, the trend that introduced in India, that came in India, it is referred to as the Islamic trend. And iska amalgamation, the synthesis, the blend of these two architectural patterns, the Indian one, the originally existing in India, and the new one which was introduced into India from the Islamic world, iska amalgamation is called as the Indo-Islamic architectural form. Now, what is the chronology? The first thing, so what is the evolution or the chronology of the Indo-Islamic architecture? So phase one is the phase under Delhi Sultanate. Okay, so from 1206 to 1526 AD, this is the period of Delhi Sultanate, under which we have 5 dynasties. So we will be studying it separately, all the 5 dynasties, their contributions and all, and architectural buildings under each dynasty. So that will be covering separately. So phase one is under the Delhi Sultanate. The second phase is under the Mughals. Now, Mughals, I've segregated it into 2 parts because we all know that in 1526, Babur defeated Ibrahim Lodi and he laid the foundation of Mughal Empire in the very first battle of Panipat. But then by 1540, Humayun was defeated by Sher Shah Suri. So in between Mughals, we have yet another dynasty ruling over India for broadly 15 to 16 years, and that is the Suri dynasty. So from 1540 to 1556, we have the Suris ruling over India. So that is the Suris dynasty. So that is a separate architectural pattern under this only Indo-Islamic. And finally, once again, the comeback of Humayun. So Humayun took back the Mughal throne in 1556. And then we have till Aurangzeb, 1707, we had the peak of the Mughal Empire. And so that is the 4th phase. Apart from this, many provincial patterns also developed during this phase only, so which we will be discussing separately. Like we had Jaunpur school, we had Bengal architecture, Malwa architecture, Gujarat architecture, Kashmir, Bahamani. So all that we are going to discuss separately. Okay, so even that we will be taking, but this is the broad chronology of Indo-Islamic architecture in India. Fine. So let's begin with the important architectural styles. Now, the very first architectural style that is already which existed in India is a trabeate form. So trabeate form is the original Indian form of architecture which existed in India before the upcoming of the Islamic dynasty, or before the upcoming of the Turks and all. So it is that architectural pattern which existed in India before 1206. Okay, so that is the trabeate form, and the defining feature of the trabeate form is, so these buildings are built on pillars, beams, and lintels. So if you remember the temple architecture of India, we had seen there the big pillars. Okay, so we'll see this forms of architecture, pillars, beams, and lintels in detail. Now, what was the role of these features? So they serve the purpose of holding the entire weight or the load of the structure. So that is the importance of pillars, beams, and lintels. So this is the trabeate form which existed originally in India. Next is the arcuate form. So arcuate form is the form which entered into India under the Islamic influence. Okay, so arcuate form ka the basic defining principle is the buildings which are built on arches. So arches is the defining feature of the arcuate form. So that buildings are called as the arcuate buildings, right? So these are the 2 architectural patterns. So when I talk about Indo-Islamic, so Indo-Islamic, it's a blend of these 2. Okay, so Indo-Islamic, we find the few features of the trabeate form, we find other features of the arcuate form being used, and then few innovation. So that is the synthesis or amalgamation of the Indo-Islamic architecture. Now we'll try to understand the features of the trabeate form. So once again, I repeat that trabeate form is the original Indian form of architecture, okay, which existed in India before 1206 AD. So what are the defining features of trabeate form? Pillars, beams, lintels, tower. So tower we have already seen under the temple architecture, that is the shikhar. So shikhar, it's a defining feature of this form, and then corbelling. So we are going to understand all these points, okay? So these are basically pillars, okay? So the vertical sections are called as pillars, and ये जो horizontal है that support the upper slab, that is called as a beam. So the horizontal section which is supporting the upper slab, that are called as the beams, okay? So this is the pillar and beam structure of the beautiful Airaviteshwar temple of the Chola period. Now the next structure, that is lintel. Now lintel and beam both are horizontal structures only, but the only difference is that lintel supports doors, windows, or the other openings, okay? So this is also horizontal structure. You can see over here, this is the entrance to the Garbha Griha. So this is a Garbha Griha, Shiv Lingam is there, Garbha Griha is there, this is the entrance. So ये जो square entrance है, so ये जो horizontal जो है, that is called as a lintel. Here also this is a door. So door के ऊपर जो horizontal thing is there, that is called as a lintel. So lintel is the horizontal structure which basically supports the openings or the doors or the windows. And when I talk about beams, beams are the massive structure which actually hold the entire weight of the entire slab, okay? So that is the difference between the beam and lintel, fine? So beam, as I mentioned, that it is first of all a horizontal structure which is used to support the pillars, which we have seen in the Airaviteshwar temple. That is, there are vertical pillars are there, and uske upar beam is there. So that is the first thing, and its main function of the beam is to support the slab. So जो slab होता है ऊपर का, which rests on the beam, उसका main function है beam का to support that, hold that slab. And beam is called as, it's a framing member, and it is a part of a structural frame of any building. Second, as I mentioned, lintels. So lintel is a horizontal structure which is usually used to support masonry over windows, that is the windows hai, doors hai, the other openings, like so that are being supported by the lintels. And pillars, beams, and lintels, these three are the main elements of the trabeate form of architecture, and these three elements hold the entire weight of the building, okay? So any doubt up till now? Any issues with respect to these three, pillar, beams, and lintels?
No, ma'am.
All right. The next part, the next is corbelling, okay? So we saw that in trabeate form, pillars are there, beams are there, lintels are there, and then we have corbelling. So what is corbelling? Corbelling, it's a type of placement of stones in such a pattern that it gives to a shape of an arch. So here you can see that the stones are placed in such a way that it projects like an arch. So this is not a true arch. This is called as a arch which has been formed by a corbelling technique. Hence we call it as corbelled arch, okay? So arches existed, but these arches are called as the corbelled arch, not the true arch. The true arch is the one which we will be studying under the arcuate architectural form. This is the corbelled arch, okay? So these are the defining features of trabeate. Tower I have not shown over here because we have already seen shikhars in the temple architecture, okay? So up till now, whatever we covered, that is the trabeate form, that is the original Indian form of architecture. Now coming to the next one that we are going to understand, that is the arcuate. Now what is the difference between the arcuate arch and the corbelled arch? So you can see over here, corbelled arch, that is the arch under the trabeate form. It is the one which has been formed due to the arrangement of the stones in a particular pattern. So niche se pillars, and then you can see that the way the stones are being placed, the space becomes narrow. So that gives us a projection of an arch. Now this arch which you are seeing in the left hand side, this is the arcuate arch, or this is also called as the true arch, which developed under the Islamic influence, that is the Islamic architecture ke under. So what are the defining features of this arcuate arch? So in arcuate arch, especially the main stone that bears the entire weight and all, the defining element over here is called as the keystone, okay? So keystone is that stone, if you like take it out, the entire structure will collapse. That is the most defining element of this entire arch. So this is a keystone. Then these are the vertical supports you can see over here. This line, actually ये जो line होता है जहां से ये arch चालू हो जाता है, this line, the line is not here, just I'm just showing it. This is called as the springen line. And ये जो stones होते हैं apart from the keystone are called as voisers. and the last stone like voicer, ये जो है arrows हैं, these are voicers, and जो last वाला है जहां से immediate pillar चालू होता है, these are called as springes. Okay, so the stone from which like above the pillar, immediately above the pillar, the first one here and here on the left hand side and the right hand side are called as springes. उसके ऊपर के 1 2 3 1 2 3 are the voicers, and उसके ऊपर का the middle one is the keystone. So this is called as the arcuate arch, or it is also called as the true arch. Okay, and these are the supporting ones are the abutments or the buttress. Okay, and these are the vertical support. So this is called as the arcuate arch or the true arch, and this one is the corbelled arch. Then the next important structure under the this arcuate form is the dome. So dome, when we talk about, so this is the dome, the spherical structure. On the dome, we find an inverted lotus. Okay, so inverted lotus, you can see over here, inverted lotus like structure is there, and then your the decorative element is there. Like usually in the Hindu temples and all, we see kalash being there. So here, instead of that, we have finial. So this is called as a finial, and this is an inverted lotus. This is a dome, and earlier the domes didn't have drum. So directly arch के ऊपर dome आ जाता था. But later on we see that just to increase the height of the dome, we have additional structure below the dome that is called as a drum. So drums are being made in order to increase the size of the dome. Okay, so this is a dome. This again, this is a defining feature of the arcuate form. Okay. Then yeah, you can see over here domes over here. So dome है exactly whatever we saw over here. So dome, उसके ऊपर inverted lotus structure is there, and you can see over here the finial it's there on the upper side of the dome. And ये जो बाकी के जो pillars like है, these are called as minarets. Okay, so ये जो vertical pillars हैं, they are called as minarets. And minarets के ऊपर ये जो है, this structure is a pillared chhatri, and which is usually called as cupola. Okay, so this is called as cupola, the structure which is there on the minaret. So this is the minaret, you can see over here. Minaret ke upar, the structure which is visible over here, that is called as cupola. Then the next image which you are seeing over here, this is a vaulted roof. So vaulted roof, it is also called as an arched roof. So number of arches are being merged together. You can see over here there are different arches. एक दो ऐसे अलग-अलग arches हैं. So number of arches are clubbed together. So these are series of arches which are clubbed together, and that is giving us a projection like a vaulted roof. So again, this is a defining feature of the arcuate architecture. Okay, so these are all the important points of the arcuate form. So arcuate form में क्या है? Arch है, dome है, minarets हैं, and vaulted roof is there. Okay, so these are the defining features of arcuate form: arcuate arch, dome. So the domes which we saw, minarets, and the vaulted roof. Now we will be proceeding towards the Indo-Islamic architecture. Okay, so Indo-Islamic architecture, as I mentioned that this architecture is basically inspired by the architectural styles of Central Asia, Arabia, and Persia. So all these Turks and all the people from Central Asia, those who came to India, they introduced these features in India, the features of dome, arches, and minarets. And some of the indigenous elements were integrated into the buildings, and that synthesis emerged into Indo-Islamic architecture. Now, the main reason for this synthesis was that कि ये जो Turkish rulers थे, they utilized the services of the local Indian craftsmen. So, since the local Indian craftsmen were employed in the making of this architectural buildings and all, as a result, we find the amalgamation of Indian architectural form also into this one, and that gave a blended form of a new architecture, that is Indo-Islamic architecture. Now, what are the features? So this can be a question, and this has been a question. What are the features of the Indo-Islamic architecture? So it's a blend of trabeate. तो trabeate का क्या लिया है? तो trabeate का इन लोग ने pillars लिया है, beams लिया है, lintels लिया है. Tower has not been taken. Tower has not been taken from the trabeate form. Corbelling has been taken. In the initial part, we'll see that कि जो first Quwwatul Islam mosque का जो arch है, it's a corbelled arch. So trabeate form का 4 things have been taken: pillars, beams, lintels, and corbelled arch. Arcuate form का क्या लिया है? Everything: arches, dome, minarets, walls. And what are the other defining features? Okay, so ये दोनों का blend तो है ही. Apart from that, whatever is the extra, so that we are going to understand now. So here the focus is on use of multiple sandstone, colored sandstone, so mainly red and yellow. Then use of lime mortar and gypsum mortar. Now when I talk about lime mortar and gypsum mortar, so lime mortar was not earlier used in India, but gypsum mortar, if you know that Indus Valley civilization में जो Great Bath है, so in Great Bath gypsum mortar was used in order to make the Great Bath watertight. But after IVC, we do not find the use of gypsum mortar. So IVC में खाली gypsum mortar was used. उसके बाद this technique of use of gypsum mortar was lost, and इसका direct rise होता है in the this phase, Indo Islamic phase में ये in the Islamic phase it emerges once again. Limestone mortar was not used. It was used during this period only. Then we find extensive use of white marble, use of different colored marbles, and this was mainly started by Mughals. So different colored marbles were mainly introduced in India by Mughals. Then we have geometrical designs. So one defining feature of Islamic architecture is that separated from the Indian one is that India में हम क्या देखते हैं, extensive sculptures, human figurines are there, right? That is absolutely absent in the Islamic में human being के figurines are not there. Okay, so here we find geometrical designs, we find floral designs, flowers and leaves. Calligraphy is also there. Now there are different types of calligraphy: Tugra calligraphy, Kufi calligraphy, Nastalia calligraphy. So different forms of calligraphy have been used. Arabesque, it's a technique of integrate designs and all. Then glazed tiles, so colorful glazed tiles emerged during this period. Then Petra dura. So what is Petra dura? So Petra dura, on Taj Mahal we find that ki marble ke upar there is a use of precious and semi-precious stones on marble. So mainly ye jo Petra dura hai, the style of using precious and the semi-precious stones on the architectural structures and all, this flourished under Shah Jahan. Okay, so these are the Islamic elements and all we can say. And Indian elements क्या है, तो Indian elements भी यहाँ पे आता है, that is use of Indian motifs. So bell है, lotus है, we even find swastik and swan, elephant and swan are typically seen under the Akbar buildings. Okay, so we do not find them under other buildings, but typically Akbar के time के जो buildings है उस time पे we see elephant and swan. Bell, lotus and swastik were gradually used in the other buildings also. Then one peculiarity of the Islamic architecture is that spacious structures, because you know that कि उनका जो prayer होता है, it's a congregation. नमाज जब पढ़ते हैं, it's a praying together, so they require a very spacious courtyard and all. So buildings are quite open, airy, with big courtyards and big balconies. And one more technique which is used in the Indo-Islamic architecture is English bond technique. Okay, so it's a technique of laying of the bricks, which we'll be understanding. So these are the features of the Indo-Islamic architecture. First of all, little blend of trabeate form, little blend of arcuate form. Then with time, the innovations went on and on. So कुछ चीजें इन लोगों ने जैसे time आगे बढ़ा add करते गए. Few Indian elements like motifs were also being added. So this is the arabesque technique. So arabesque technique, as I mentioned, that it's an intricate design that is there. Then calligraphy, so ये है कुतुब मीनार के pillars. So कुतुब मीनार के pillars के ऊपर the calligraphy करके they have encarved the verses of Quran. Then this is Petra dura. So you can see over here, ये जो work है, ये marble के ऊपर you can actually see the semi-precious and the precious stones है, ये stones है जो लगाए हुए हैं. So this work, where on the white marble you are putting you're attaching the precious stones, that is called as Petra dura, which specifically flourished under Shah Jahan. Then you can see over here ये elephants है, ये अकबर का आर्किटेक्चर के अंडर है, ये लाहौर फोर्ट में यूज किया गया है. सो दिस इज अगेन अ हिंदू इन्फ्लुएंस. एलिफेंट स्कल्पचर्स हमें देखने को मिलते हैं. कैन सी ओवर हियर लाहौर फोर्ट में दिस हैज बीन यूज्ड. These are the glazed tiles. So this is again a defining feature of the Islamic architecture, that काफी glazed tiles का initially हम लोग को देखने को नहीं मिलता. As the time proceeds and all the architectural pattern form evolves, we see the use of these glazed tiles. Okay, decorative element है ये. And this is English bond technique. So English bond technique में क्या होता है कि एक level आप horizontal डालते हो bricks का, the next is vertical, then again horizontal, then vertical. Okay, so एक for example, the first line is the vertical placing of the bricks, then the second is horizontal placing of the bricks, then again you can see there's a vertical placing of the brick, then again there is a horizontal. So this is vertical, horizontal, vertical, horizontal. This pattern of laying of the bricks is called as English bond technique of laying of the bricks. Okay, so these all are the features